Right, hello and welcome again. So we are coming back with another strong point on the agenda after the break. So I hope you had a good time during the lunch. So today I'm with Michael Thomsen. Michael, it's great to have you here at Warsaw at the Flutter Summit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for making it to Warsaw. And we're going to talk about the Flutter, however, from slightly broader perspective. So we've heard today a lot of like case studies, specific ideas, lightning talks about, how can we excel with Flutter. But we also should remember that the AI is the topic of this year's session. And what I would like to start our discussion with, Michael, is by asking you to what extent it would be still relevant in foreseeable future, whatever foreseeable means these days, that the underlying framework in which we build our digital products is still relevant. Will we care at all in 2 years if it's still Flutter or anything else?
Yes, one of life's big questions right now. The short answer is I think it still matters, and I have no plans on retiring the next few years. I suspect you want the slightly longer version of that answer, right?
Right. If you could elaborate, that's
So like to cue it up, right? The theories I'm hearing out there is why do you need multiplat when you have agents, right? Like you can just utter out your requirements and the agents will go in the background and take care of it and produce everything you need, right? I think that type of reasoning is very dangerous and very reductive, right? Like, because you can ask a question about everything, like why do you need frameworks? Why do you need programming languages? Just have the agents produce like binaries. Why do you need operating systems? They can just produce the environment too, right? Like, why do you need anything in that kind of world? So I think we need to have a much more almost academic and like reasonable conversation about what these things are. And I think there are a number of key benefits, not just neutral things, but key benefits to multi-platform. And I think even more so to the type of multi-platform that we together have built with Flutter. I think the first one is becoming, the first reason is becoming very apparent right now. Tokens are not free, right? Like they were for a little bit, and now very quickly they are very much not free. And it's just very token inefficient to have these agents, even if they could like go off and create all these abstractions. It is much more token efficient to use something like Flutter. The agent is driving one shared source code base, and from that you can produce all the artifacts you need for all the platforms that your customers care about, right? It is a much more rational way of consuming your tokens. And I think that is becoming very clear to everyone that abstractions still matter. They actually matter a lot more than we thought they did. So I think that's number one, right? Tokens and abstractions matter, and they matter a lot. The second thing is an old-time benefit that I think we should have all internalized because it was always one of the key values of Flutter. And I think it's the extremely high degree of consistency we give across platforms. This is not just a benefit to developers. It's a huge benefit to everyone involved in the app lifecycle, right? Like product managers like myself, it's like one set of requirements you maintain instead of nsets, right? It's your marketing teams, it's one set of functionality that you go to market with. It's your support teams, it's one set of support things that you go out and support. Like, you no longer have to like pre-queue up any conversation with on platform X and then something, right? It's just in our experience, in our app, like this is what things are. So this consistency that we always had and always hugely benefited from is huge in AI because there's still no perfect AI, right? We are talking about getting to maybe human grade, we are talking about superhuman grade, but even those grades imply that sometimes mistakes happen. And if you don't have a single source multi-platform abstraction, and now you have agents making mistakes, it means you drift, right? And you're not going to drift in the same way on all platforms. You're going to drift in one way on iOS and a different way on Android and a different way on the desktops and on the web. And it's now on you to kind of try and bring everything in together and get back to that consistency that you still need for your customers, right? And it's just not worth it. I think it's a huge benefit to work from a single source base. And then you worry about like the issues that you may get, and you catch the errors in that one set of sources, and your customers still get consistency. So that's number two. Number three, we actually talked about quite a bit through some of the sessions today. It's just the whole notion of guardrails and making it easier for agents. Flutter is a very declarative model. We have a very strongly typed programming language. We have things like MCP, so we can connect the agents and give them a live feed of what's going on. It just makes it so much easier for the agents to stay on the tracks, right? Because they're very good at like filling out like these mathematical models, right? So if you give them something highly typed, like highly declarative, it's so much easier for them to live in that world. And if you then give them strong feedback and you really tell them what's broken when something is broken, it's so much easier for them to correct. So like the strong typing there, like in data, is actually really important, and not less important now because you don't have humans. It may actually even be more important. So that's number three. And then there's a fourth, like smaller one, but that I hugely enjoy myself, which is I really love vibe coding with hot reload, because I get to see what's happening as it's happening, right? It's just so nice to sit there and see all the adjustments and follow along in the UI. So we've been, I think our DevRel team coined that agentic hot reload as a little marketing thing, right? But it's just good old hot reload. It's just nice to see things as you're pacing along. So yes, no surprise. I still think there's a high degree of relevancy with AI, and perhaps more so, not less so.
Right, indeed. Before I move forward, because I really like this, what you have mentioned about the risk of drifting between separate products, separate platforms, if somebody is not following the cross-platform strategy, not using those benefits. I think this is relevant. But before I move on, I'd like just to mention that some of the questions that we are discussing today with Michael have been submitted by our dear participants here. So if you are following the emails coming from us before the event, you could have a chance to submit them. And that particular risk of frameworks becoming irrelevant in the AI era was coming from Bernard Gomez from Apinio. So yes, thank you, Bernard, for that question. And if you have any follow-up question to what we are discussing, I mean, I don't want to make that discussion very private between us, like we are sitting in front of you. So feel free to ask a follow-up question if you feel like you would like probably not myself but Michael to elaborate on certain topics that we are having here. So I strongly invite you to help me to run this chat, and so that we can get all the answers that we can probably receive today. So Bernard, was your question answered? Yes, okay, great. So moving forward, indeed about this drift, right? So you've mentioned, so if we assume that the framework that's underneath, that on the top of which the agents are working hard to create the great new applications is still relevant, we still have this competitive landscape, right? And many years ago, not many years ago, but 2 years ago, I've heard that, for example, React Native is sunsetting. Then there was the whole rumor about KMP going into the stage. Right now, again, we observe on the market that React Native, due to the fact that a lot of models have been trained based on JS as a widely available technology, is now back to the equation, so to say. Among those different frameworks that are cross-platform, because indeed it is so much easier to use the cross-platform technology, regardless which, because you stay consistent between all your platforms, and there's no you avoid this drift that you've mentioned before. So between those different solutions, like what are in the era of AI, those key elements that make Flutter shine the most among peers? And why do you think this is like AI-ready framework, and why it can, be favored by the models, and so that agents would actually like to work with Flutter?
Yep. A few things come to mind. I'm not an AI expert, but it's I talk to a lot of people that are. I don't think we have a training data problem. Like I think there's plenty of training data for just about most things. I've been experimenting myself with building even something like Jasper websites using agents, which there's very, very little data for out there compared to something like Flutter. And the agent seems to do a pretty good job even on Jasper, right? You should try it. It's actually quite amazing how quickly they pick it up. And I think it goes back to the artifacts and the typing, and just there's something that can go reason about those agents and make sense of, and that helps them build an understanding pretty quickly. And I think this is a key differentiator between React Native and Flutter. Not so much the frameworks, but to some extent too. But the languages again, like I really think typing is having a resurgence here. And it's interesting because we always thought about typing as being an extra cost the developer would pay, right? Like Dart code is slightly more verbose because you have to deal with types. Agents don't care, right? Like whether they need to write like 3 lines of code or 4 lines of code, it makes no difference, right? But it makes a ton of difference that again, there's something to reason about. So I think like typing is having a comeback here, and I think the typed languages will have an easier role in the future than the untyped languages. So that's one thing. I think the other thing I'm starting to see, it'll take a bit longer, is that as it gets easier and more economical to create more types of experiences, I think we're starting to see more platforms to come alive. There seems to be, for example, some kind of resurgence around embedded again, and more experiences going embedded. And that's an area I'm super enthusiastic about myself. And I think there's a key benefit to Flutter here in this setup, which is we don't rely on wrapping a native layer that's already there. We come with the layers, right? Which means in some of these less established platforms like embedded, like on those, there isn't much to wrap, right? Because they're pretty thin platforms, and we can just come in and we can bring up the embedder, and then all our layers come to life, right? So we with just a little bit of bring up, we can bring a full stack to something like embedded. And I think if we end up with this explosion of experiences and screens and stuff that I think will happen with AI, that's going to be like a huge value add in the Flutter setup. The fact that we can just bring the whole stack.
Right. So going far beyond just the typical target platforms for it. We've recently seen the case with Toyota, right, doing exactly that thing. We've recently seen the case from LG. That is also, they are also with their team in South Korea, moving to Flutter. So the coverage for the new platforms is growing, right?
Yeah, Universal was a story we talked about a lot last year, right? Like they started with mobile, and then all the screens and the parks and restaurant experiences, and like the whole thing is just like one big Flutter experience.
Right, and also among those features that are, so to say, expected with the arrival of AI within the frameworks is the ability to create this very interactive interface, right? So
yes.
how is that positioned on the roadmap?
Yeah. We didn't even talk about that yet. Yes, there's a lot of layers here. Generative UI is the term, so Gen UI we've used so far, right? So it's this idea that once you have generative models, why not try and look for parts of the experience that you actually put in the hands of the agents? And you basically dynamically at runtime allow the agents to go and drive parts of the UI. This is something that I think is hugely promising. There's also a ton of questions, right? Like, how do you do it in a reasonable way, in a safe way? We have answers to some of those things. For example, one of the initial concerns was over very low-level things like design consistency. So we built a framework around like having catalogs of components and making sure that the agents know how to stay within like the styling guidelines and so on. There's a whole bunch of questions in this area. But I think what AI is giving us the ability to go do is kind of question some of the existing stale experiences and think about how can we vary some of these at runtime. So I think a very big, very exciting field that we're kind of pushing on and trying to understand. But that I would invite you all in to also think about like how do we do this in a fun way. We have a couple of things out there. We have a generative UI SDK you can go find that we're experimenting with. But I think the second thing worth mentioning that perhaps fewer of you are aware of is that inside that SDK is also a framework called A2UI. Agents to UI, a2ui.org. That's a whole separate framework that is actually that the Flutter team at Google has a big stake in maintaining. And it's even more general than the GenUI stuff we've worked on. So it's multi-framework. So there are renderers for just about any framework out there in the world, not just mobile, but also web frameworks and whatnot. So if you wanted to try and experiment with some amount of generative UI, even beyond Flutter or on Flutter on some platforms and not Flutter on others, that's maybe another thing to go look at. So A2UI.
Right. Thank you. And the original question was coming from Shamli Patel. I don't know if Shamli is here with us. Yes, so thank you. So it was like those questions about competitiveness of Flutter against other frameworks was inspired by your original question. So thank you for that. If there are any necessary follow-ups, don't hesitate. Yes, we've got one. Just a second. We need to have a mic so that it's probably audible for our audience, also online.
Hello. My question is like you mentioned about that you kind of considering Flutter being embedded, but even now, Flutter kind of memory footprint quite big for embedded. Does it mean that current team targeting less memory footprint in the future, so it can be fit in some less capable hardware, right? So.
Yeah, that's a great question. It turns out actually memory pressure is actually a little bit of an industry-wide concern right now because there are memory pressures all across the board in terms of making sure we all have memory enough for all these new things we'd like to do. So we are always pushing on memory consumption. That being said, there are two kind of classes of embedded devices, right? There are the small battery-powered ones that you stick on a wall somewhere and they don't do much. And that's not really a class of devices like we're super well suited for. We actually tried that 10 years ago. We had a project called Artino where we tried to move Dart to those, but it turns out it's a very hard problem. Then there are the more fully powered devices that tend to get plugged into a wall or something, and they're embedded systems, but they're a bit more capable. And we can certainly run on those, even though they often have quite a bit less memory than mobile devices. So I think we can play on those, but yes, there are more optimizations we need to do and are continuing to do. Memory pressure is a constant concern.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong, but LG case is the one that's showing that they can actually handle that problem pretty efficiently, right? And still going like the full Flutter in their tech strategy. Right, good. Any other questions? No, then we can move forward. So my next question, it's slightly from organizational perspective, because the Flutter has moved under the GCP in the cloud, Google Cloud Management. So what kind of implications does it have for Flutter, for a framework? Like what kind of changes does it introduce so that we should know of?
The short answer is not really much. Like we're a big company. I had to look it up myself. How many employees do you think Google has?
I would say 200.
190,000. Like I had to go look it up. That is 10 times more than the city I grew up in, right? So it's it's a pretty big place. I also grew up in a small city, but that's a different story for a different day. It's a big company. Like companies this size, like internal reorgs are a constant thing. They don't actually necessarily imply anything about any particular project. So it is true that we recently got moved from like one VP to another. That's happened at least, I think, 6 or 7 times in my career. So it's a pretty freaking thing. There's a reason, though, a meaningful reason in this case. We got put together with a bunch of other open source teams. There was a significant amount of open source teams across the cloud, actually. Some examples are like Kubernetes or TensorFlow and a few other projects. So there's actually a lot of teams that are working with open source that we get to be closer with. And now we also got the open source governance team as a sister team of ours. So that's really the main motivation. And it's not a new thing for us to collaborate with the cloud team. The longest standing internal partner for us that I think you're all aware of internally is Firebase. Like, we've worked with Firebase, I think, for 9 years now. They're also on cloud and also sit next to us, right? So it's just a very natural evolution for what we do. I don't know if this is implied in the question, right? Like, but we have no plans of this. This doesn't mean we're gonna go put like a billing account on Flutter or like make it part of that be a requirement, right? Like, Flutter is still Flutter. We're still an open source project. We'll probably build out a few more integrations. That's actually already underway. Hopefully you all heard recently, for example, we're pushing on cloud functions for Dart. I would love to kind of both build out and support the wider initiatives around like full stack Dart. I think that would be a huge benefit to all of us. And we don't need to own that whole space at all, right? I just want to do some foundational work in that space, and we've been doing that for years. And we'll do a bit more there, right? But it's a space that I think there's room for many people to operate in, and a space I'm super enthusiastic about. I think Dart has actually run on the server for quite a while in various internal projects. And something like Pub, for example, runs 100% like on a Dart-based stack with a bunch of components from cloud thrown on top of it, right? So it's something we do ourselves all the time.
Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong that you probably can, support GCP better in any way, right? And that, you look for some natural integrations between different solutions that are under the same umbrella, right? So, and yes, we remember very well the times when the Firebase was like the strategic partner with even the Flutter Firebase Festival in Prague that happened some time ago, that we also were the proud sponsors of. Right, and honestly, I also like the move that GCP is like, from the perspective of the audience that we're having here, probably slightly more mature solution from the perspective of choosing it as a infrastructure for your project, right? So this move is certainly also better from the perspective of enterprise audience, right? Good, and. What I would like to get back to are those is the roadmap for Flutter. And another important item on the roadmap, it was already mentioned earlier that I want to hear better your perspective on the coupling of Material and Cupertino from Flutter. We have a lot of teams here that already have invested a lot in their design systems to make it very efficient, to build very white label applications, to enable their teams to use better AI. Even as the agenda for this conference has been structured, we consider design system as a very important prerequisite for Tether agentic workflows that could be added to Flutter. So taking all of that into account, and because you already mentioned that it's going to happen, right? So what new superpowers will that give to the teams that are using Flutter, and what kind of impact will that have on those teams?
It's hard to assess the full impact, because I view this as the beginning of a journey, and we'll see where that journey takes us. But my vision for that journey is for Flutter to be even more open and even more community powered. And let's try and talk through that through some examples, right? So we already talked about design systems earlier, right? So the goals are to get that out in some units that are easier to manage, easier to contribute to, but also, I mean, to put our our design systems are on equal footing with all the other design systems, right? Like, I would love to get to a place where there are many, many, many supported design systems for Flutter. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of ones out there now, but I think we need to get to more of an equal footing where it's not like material versus the rest, right? Like where there's truly a thriving ecosystem of design systems. So that's the part we talked about already. The part we didn't talk about is we're also having some pretty extensive discussions around pluggability in terms of target platforms, right? So those of you that have kind of tracked the journey of Flutter is, every time we had like a big event, we would like add a platform, right? Like we started with a 2, and then we got to 3, and then we got to 6, and then we kind of got stuck, right? Because it turns out it's actually very
Nothing new to announce,
expensive,
right?
Yeah, so I'm not going to announce one more. I'm going to announce like N, where N is what you want it to be, right? Because that's the place I want to get to. I want to design Flutter in such a way that the Flutter core team can focus on a core, and then the community can focus on everything around it. But I want to do it in a way where this doesn't make it any worse for the app developers, right? I don't want to degrade the core experience of an app developer. So the way to do that is to have some means of controlled extensibility. And we're trying to design those extensibility APIs there. And it really is like everything from, right, like how do you bring up new embedders to how does something like the Flutter tool, like when you type Flutter create, like how can the thing after create be something that we don't control? It could be something, maybe a package on pub. And you could do something like Flutter create tvOS, some tag, something, right? And now you're creating an app that's running against a target that wasn't actually designed by someone sitting inside the core, right? So it really becomes this very extensible architecture. So we can get away from discussing what's the one next platform to what is the full set of platforms that anybody needs, and how can anyone go create support for those. We've been calling this Flutter everywhere internally, and that really is the dream, right? That Flutter can power an experience everywhere, and without someone needing to go having to change like a few lines of code that lives in a repo that only we can change, right? So that's the dream behind pluggable platforms. We're just designing this now. If you happen to have done work for like your own platform, I'd love to talk to you and put you in contact with the team members that are trying to plan this out. So like hunt me down and come talk to me. But we are aware there are actually a bunch of platforms out there that various community team members and GDEs and others have created. So we're going to go look at those too. And again, this is the beginning of a journey. So there's no like tight deadline here. We will evolve as we go. So like component number 1, well, like changes to the design systems. Component number 2 is a different approach to target platforms. And then sort of the next layer and perhaps overarching layer is rethinking how we do what we call governance, which is how we think about the open source project. Because I think once we get to a place where these things get on more of an equal footing, we can also start to kind of erase that line between like what's been called like the Flutter team at Google versus everyone else, right? Like I want that line to go away. I want it to be much more about like all of us, right? And we are taking some very concrete steps. We announced our partnership with Canonical as one very concrete example of what I have in mind, right? Like they've stepped up, they indicated an interest in investing and taking responsibility. And we were very happy to cede some control in that case, right? So they are now doing the primary governance of the desktop platforms because they have shown an interest and demonstrated a care for doing that, right? I would love to do much more of that, right? I think it's the way we can all move forward and really put Flutter everywhere.
Right. I reaching out to our audience, I remember like, was it like 2 years ago when Eric, you were making your keynote saying that if anywhere there's a GPU and CPU, the Flutter should shine, right? So yes, so that's the very similar dream. And since I've already mentioned Eric, like Eric is the sitting here at the audience, decided to identify the friction with code push. We at Linko, we have also identified a couple of other frictions like end-to-end testing. Today we've presented the idea of the Flutter goal that also is inspired by other technologies that is currently being enabled by recent changes in the Flutter framework. What do you see as a friction right now? What are like the major, what still causes a friction, I would say, and where do you still see some things that probably you might have, from the time perspective, could have been done slightly differently, or we still see some gaps that probably are not for you as a Google team to solve, but as for example you've mentioned with the desktop support, you simply introduced partners in the partnership to delegate the governance over certain parts. What are other frictions you can see?
I think the biggest friction is just I would love for us to move faster than we can, right? But it's very hard to move fast. It turns out, if you don't want to be reckless, at least. So we are trying, whenever we hit internal friction and it goes too slow, we try and figure out why we're going so slow. And it often turns out that it's something like the design systems example, right? Like it's that we're doing too much or we're constraining a problem too much. In the design systems case, the constraint was that we couldn't really make changes without that turning into pain for each and every customer, right? Like it's a terrible constraint to have. I as a product manager, though, I'm very impatient, right? Like I wish, I wish the moment we get these insights, we would flick our fingers and the next day the solution would be there. But it turns out it takes a long time to drive these changes, right? So I think we started talking about the design system changes at least 6 months ago, right? And we just announced now that we froze stuff in the framework, and then in the next release, we will put out the packages. And now we're having internal conversations about when do we then remove the stuff from the framework, right? And it's like, I want to go faster. I really want to go faster. But I also want to be respectful, because sometimes when we go too fast, we get told by you lot that, we're breaking things too much. So this is actually an area I invite feedback on. Let us know when we're going too fast. Let us know when we're going too slow. It's a very delicate balance, and it's hard, right? Because I don't have the everyday insight into all the apps that you're all working on. So it's what may seem obvious from your point of view is not obvious if you're seeing it from the other side, right? So I think this is an area of friction around what's the right speed to move at for each of the big public sets of APIs we have. That's one thing. I think a second area of friction is still around, right? If you just do UI, if you could only do UIs that didn't do anything, it'd be very easy, right? Because UI code is very abstracted, and there's very few platform variances, and we, mostly abstract them away, right? So if you only have to do UI, it would be very easy. It turns out, though, most apps need to do something when you push a button, right? And that's not as easy as I wish it would be. It's still hard to get to native APIs. We've tried a couple of attempts at this. We did platform channels. Now we're doing direct native interop. And I think direct native interop is moving along, getting a lot better, but again, not quite at the speed I wanted to. But hopefully in the next few months, we'll have that mostly wrapped up and we can start to think about how to use that more, right? But I think there's still too much friction when you need to do platform-specific things. And I wish we could do more to eradicate some of that.
Okay, great. So again, the question to our audience, if you have anything to add. Oh yes, we've got there in the end, Mate, if you can help. And think about other questions. This is not always a chance to meet Michael on the stage, asking, answering whatever you throw here at us.
Hi,
Please.
I'm Narendra. I'm an engineering manager from Eon Next. My question about to Google or for Flutter, are we gonna have anything for a roadmap for wearables, especially the watch OS? The widgets or the UIs are not compatible, or do you have any plans for it?
I really hope that what I was talking about before would be the solution to that, right? Like I hope that I don't have to be on the critical path for that, because there's too many platforms for me to be on the hot path, right? So I hope I can turn that into a community problem of how do we all add support for all the various variable platforms, because there are many, right? I mean, there are many even just within Google, but more broadly in the world, there are many, many, right? So I'm hoping I can create a platform that allows us together as a community to support all of them. But I need help, right? Like I cannot do it all. It's just physically. And I mean, it's not even a hiring problem. Even if I had infinite headcount, I don't think I would want to be on the bottleneck for that, because it's just, it's too much to put in like one layer.
All right. Any other questions?
It seems like currently Flutter team focus heavily on AI, but what about some issues that standing like in the GitHub issues for ages and which seems kind of fundamental? And good example here is keyboard junk animations on Android or like iOS. Why is it so hard to implement, even though like some other frameworks tackle this problem? Thank you.
I don't know that specific issue, so I can't speak to that specific issue, but I can speak about this in general. We focus a lot of our time on fundamentals still. I mean, we really do. It maybe not always be visible, but there's a significant piece of the team that doesn't do like fancy VNext type of work or anything, but just the foundational stuff. The problem is it's such a wide surface, right? And it's actually where some of the inspiration for the platform work came from. Because if we had to maintain all 6 platforms and you think about all the like specific issues like this, it's just you do like this and the team's gone, right? Like, so that's one of the reasons why we're trying to find different ways of scaling by having us focus on less, so we can get to the bottom of those issues. But that is still like we still look at foundational issues. I will admit there are probably issues that get lost in the tracker now and then because there's a lot of issues. There's actually an area we're trying to see if we can apply more AI to help us find some more signal in the noise, honestly. I don't know if it's an answer to your specific question or not, right? But we still care. We still try and resolve the most prominent low-level issues, and we will continue to do that.
All right, probably one last question.
Okay, Mehmet Ali. I'm happy that you mentioned about tvOS. Great. My question is related to that. For the Flutter tool, for the Flutter CLI, those platforms such as tvOS, we need to add a wrapper to our Flutter CLI. So here in Flutter tool, you said like a community can build more platform. To bringing more platform, in the Flutter tool, those platforms are actually hard-coded. So we had to, for example, behave in our platform like iOS because it's the closest to ours, and also for other many things we had to use workarounds to handle plugins or I don't know assets or FFI compiled things. So for that, are you planning to in the Flutter roadmap? Are you planning to make it better, maybe, or improve the API for the embedders, other platforms in the tool, maybe more flexible? Are you planning to do it on Flutter tool, official one?
Absolutely. That is the work I'm describing when I talk about pluggability and extensibility. It's to try and solve maybe not all those issues, but the most important ones, right? And they're exactly the things you mentioned now. Like you look at the platform API, it has 6 or maybe 7 actually for historical reasons. Like is XXX get us on it? It should be extensible. The template should be extensible. The plugin system, we should find ways of making that more extensible. Yes, all those things. We are doing some initial requirement gathering now. Once it's a bit more complete, we will share that out. We will solicit feedback, and we will start to work through that. But again, this is a journey, right? So it'll take time to get there. But absolutely, that is the type of work I have in mind when I talk about this.
Yeah, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And also, I'm very thank you that you are aware of tvOS.
All right, so probably one last question from me to you, Michael, since like when I was preparing for the conference here, I realized that here today among the audience we have team members from the teams that are responsible for the digital experience of more than 300 million users worldwide. And when I was, that was my initial assumption when I was talking to the people yesterday and today, I realized that the number could be even larger. So we can fairly say that the audience that we have here is impactful. So it used to be always the case that we have a lot of asks and we have a lot of favors to you that okay, why Google do it for us, right? And when it will be finally done, etc. So but I would like to reverse that dynamics a little bit and ask you like what do you need from us? What do you need from this community? What do you need from enterprise companies that are adopting Flutter? What would be helpful from the perspective of you as a product manager responsible for the roadmap, responsible for prioritization, decision-making process? What do you need from us, Michael?
I love it. This is like it's my birthday, and I just get to share my list now. Fantastic. Oh, there's a lot on this list. The first one that comes to mind, and this may sound like a small ask, but it's not. It's hugely important. It is please continue to help tell the story of why Flutter. Right? I mean, very basic things like write blog posts about how you're being successful and why you are. Share stuff on social media, right? Like I know because I can look at a bunch of telemetry and data and stuff. I know there's so many good apps out there where those stories are never being told. Please help tell the stories. It is the strongest way we can grow this ecosystem, and it is the best way of ensuring that I don't need to answer the question always of is Flutter going to die tomorrow? I will probably get that question anyway because I always do. Thanks for not asking it today. But really, for all of us, right? Like, just tell the story of how you're being successful with Flutter. And you don't have to tell it on like accounts we manage, right? Like tell it on your own accounts, right? On your own blogs, or on LinkedIn, or on whatnot. People will find these. We will, amplify on socials and stuff. But please just tell those stories. I cannot like understate this. Please, please, please do that. So that's the main one. And then I think the second one, like if we're gonna pull off this whole thing I'm talking about with like, the big community and Flutter everywhere, we're gonna need help, right? We're all gonna need to step up and contribute. And I think we all need to ask, like, not just what Flutter can do for you, but what you can do for Flutter, right? To paraphrase. So I think start that mindset. It turns out lots of people already have that mindset, and there's so much good stuff out there, and I just need to help, like, with a little bit of extensibility and putting some spotlight on stuff. But everybody should be asking that question too more broadly. But start with the stories. Please tell stories.
Right. And let me one add thing on the top of that, right? Probably to our audience here. It is also about, one thing is about to share your stories with Flutter, but also is all about caring for each other, right? So if you, for example, would like to see the new tools coming, the new support for new platforms and some additional solutions that can help you in your development, why don't you also try to use whatever is existing? If you feel like you want to have a short path to the code push, don't invent it yourself. Go for the shorebird. If you'd like to experiment experiment with the design systems, give Widgetbook a try. If you'd like to think about how can you structure your testing strategy properly, try to experiment with Petrol, right? So we should all, look at the tools that we are all building together as a community and make them stronger, make them better, because only based on the feedback that we can give to each other, only based on our mutual contributions, we can, as an ecosystem, make the Flutter better, make the Flutter more ready, make it more ready for whatever comes next, right, with this revolution. So yes, I think that with that idea in mind, I would like to thank you very much, Michael, for being here with us, for making it to Warsaw. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks you to all of you for being part of this wonderful community. I mean this with the heart when I say this is the most positive developer community I've ever been part of, and you're all a huge piece of that. Thank you.